This is how the stand ends. Not with a bang, but with a loud, wet fart. Man, I don't know what to say about this. Drew here, and I'm going to be reviewing the last episode of The Stand, and I was kind of interested to see what they would do with this because Stephen King gave this explanation that he was going to write this episode and that he had this motivation for this, that he felt bad that Franny, dear heavens, Franny didn't get to face off with Randall Flagg, that she didn't get to participate in the climax of this story, and he wanted to fix that. So this episode, after the first 5 minutes or so, is all new material, and it's terrible. Stephen King J.K. Rowling'd this crap. I'm sorry, I have to say it. That's what this is. He's gone back to a story that didn't need fixing and tried to retroactively fix it, and it's just terrible. I get his motivations were pure, and I can understand why CBS All Access was excited for him to do this. They're like, oh, new material? This will make sure that all the people that love the book show up. And maybe if you're a diehard King fan and you are still watching this, waiting for this ending, there's going to be some references to King's other works that will make you feel that this was kind of cool. Some Easter eggs that'll make it worth it to you. But to me, it simply wasn't worth it. At the point that they defeated Randall Flagg and the community in New Vegas through this, happenstance, through the lightning strike and the bomb that went off and killed everyone. By the time that has happened, they do not need to have Randall Flagg interact with the main characters again. And that's exactly what happens this episode, and it is such a mistake. I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail than I usually do recapping this episode, just because I feel like some of you might not actually be intending to watch it, and I'd rather just fill you in on what happens so that you don't watch it, because I have to be honest, I watched most of it, but there were times where I was just like clicking skip on my Apple TV remote, like 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Man, this is hard to sit through because basically it's like about as necessary as the fourth season of Downton Abbey. The thing is, even if this miniseries had been really, really good, there's something to be said for ending a story pretty soon after the climax. People, if you look at the series that this was oftentimes compared to, Lord of the Rings, if you were to argue that this miniseries did for the Stand novel what the Lord of the Rings movies did for Tolkien's novels, then, even if you argue that, look at Lord of the Rings. What's people's big complaint about that third movie that always comes up? That it has too many endings and that it goes on too long after it's all over. And that's the exact same problem here, only this miniseries did not do justice to King's novel and isn't, the unqualified success that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is. So why would you want to elongate the ending? So just to give you the quick rundown, if you've seen the episode, feel free to skip ahead. Stu returns, as he does in the novel, with Tom Cullen after Franny has had the baby. The baby comes down with Captain Trips, but ends up being fine. They skip forward, and, Stu and everyone in the Boulder community is relatively happy. They're having a dance. And then Franny comes to Stu and suggests that they take a trip to the coast because she just really wants to revisit. And on this completely unnecessary journey, they stop at a house and Stu leaves Franny there with the baby. And while he's gone, Randall Flagg appears and causes Franny to fall into a well. I'm not making this up. And after she falls into the well, she enters into that kind of spirit realm that we've seen a lot of visions of in this series so far. And she's tempted by Randall Flagg in scenes that are directly paralleling Eve in the Garden of Eden. Franny even tells Flagg at one point, "But get behind me, you effing serpent." And Then she meets up with Mother Abigail, who, talks with her about the meaning of human suffering and how we have to continue to fight and to continue to make our stand even as the wheel continues to turn. And Stu gets back to the house. Franny awakens. A younger version of Mother Abigail appears and helps him pull Franny out of the well. They continue to the coast, and then this series wraps up with its last scene, which is Randall Flagg appearing to this indigenous population that he showed to Franny while they were in the visions, and that has not had contact with anyone to contract Captain Trips. So that's it. So all that pretty much unnecessary. Like, I think at the point that Randall Flagg has been defeated, I don't think we need to have him show up again just so that Franny can be included in the confrontation with evil. I think that the ending of the series, as far as Randall Flagg is concerned, needed to stay pretty similar to what it is in the novel. And I give, King credit. I feel like it's nice that he wanted to include Franny, but was anyone really dying to have Franny get this interaction with Randall Flagg? Was that something that anybody was just screaming for? I don't think that it was. And overall, I just think, the writing was the least bad part of this episode. I think that King acquits himself fine. If you were going to tag an unnecessary epilogue onto the stand, this is far from the worst one that it could have had from a writing perspective, because at least, he draws some interesting parallels. I thought the scene with Mother Abigail was kind of a nice little wrap up to her character. It was kind of nice to have one more opportunity to see her and to say goodbye. I thought that a lot of the lines she gave, such as quoting Job, how Job was told by God when he questioned why all these horrible things had happened, basically, where were you when I created the world? Who are you to question me? Which is not really an answer, but that's, basically the best answer that anyone can get from God when it comes to human suffering. The moment with Flagg undercuts the climax in Vegas. If Flagg can just go around Earth tempting the protagonists from the Boulder community whenever he wants to, then that just kind of makes it seem like the stand in New Vegas really didn't matter. And this whole sequence, it just reeked of contrivance. Like, it was people acting like they would in a stupid horror movie where people just do dumb things, like Stu leaving Franny by herself, and them coming to this one spot where there's a dangerous well, and then Franny falling into the well the way she did. It was a lot of just like, okay, this is all very contrived, and the characters are not acting like they have up till this point in the story, I feel. So overall, I was just not impressed with all of that. But what really made this bad, I think, was the directing, which was just very, very schmaltzy, very, very saccharine. It felt like they were trying to have this very sentimental and moving ending, but it just it's not the type of story that The Stand is to a certain extent, and they really haven't made us care enough about the characters for this to work. It was funny because when Stu and Franny say goodbye to the members of the Boulder community, it was like literally Tom Cullen is the only one there that I have any kind of fondness for. The rest of them, the show has not done the work to develop. So it was just like, I feel nothing. And then the ending where they're staring out at the ocean and Franny talks about having more kids. Just, it was just cheesy. It felt very much like a Hallmark movie. It really didn't fit with the Stand and with the tone of the rest of this story. So I was not impressed with this ending. I will say the part of this ending that worked was the same part that works in the book. The part where Randall Flagg appears to these indigenous people. And I thought the special effects were pretty good when he does his trigger thing and blows off this indigenous man's face, and they all bow to worship him. And, again, for people who haven't read the novels and don't understand where King takes this character next, that he becomes this villain in the Dark Tower series and in other series, I feel like this is probably just confusing. But again, this series really did not work as a whole if you weren't familiar with King's books already. So I've been really, really critical of this finale. I really didn't like it. I had mixed feelings about a lot of this series, but this was the one part that I was just like, that was just a mistake. Unequivocal bad. So to me, if you haven't been keeping up with the show and you're interested to see what the ending is, don't bother. I really don't think it's worth your time. But if you did watch it and you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. These are obviously just my opinions for what they are worth. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of other shows, I'm going to start reviewing Clarice on CBS All Access. I doubt that I'm going to be doing it on a weekly basis, but if I like it, I may. And other shows, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.